Okay, so 2006 Mazda 3. We'll get in here a little bit and you can see all this condensation on my headlight. Should say in, not on. Unfortunately, the seal's gone bad somewhere on the assembly. This side, I don't have any moisture buildup, but it has gotten hazy. Maybe I'll get into a different video clarifying what I've seen on Chrisfix, for instance, trying to sand it down and clear coat it with some Rust-Oleum. Either way, I've only found one video on this on YouTube, and it wasn't all that well done. So let's move on over here. Well, you want to remove this plastic anchor here, the second one here, and right here at this joint, you're going to pry the plastic wheel well out of the way, and you'll find a bolt with an 8mm head holding the two together. Then we'll go across the bottom here, and just these ones closest to the bumper, there's about 8 or 10 of those you're going to take off all the way over to the other wheel well, where you're going to take off the same two anchors and the bolt hiding up here. Then as we come over to here, we've got these Phillips head bolts on each side, as well as your rubber bumpers. We'll get this to focus clearly. You can see the edge. It's rounded on the bottom with the opening, because when you want to remove these, you will slide that out like so, and then you've got a plastic insert inside of an anchor. So once you pry out this plastic insert here, the anchor will let go and you can remove these from the top side of the bumper. So we'll go ahead and set all our stuff aside. Make sure you're not losing anything. And the inside here, you have one clip and two clips. And I'm going to use both hands, otherwise I'm going to have some trouble. It sure felt like that one just broke too, so be careful with that. But with all of those off and both sides separated, you're ready to press those two clips, pull the bumper forward. I've got a small blanket underneath to help support it, to make sure we're not just laying on the hard concrete. Now for our easiest step so far. You have a plastic anchor up here you're going to remove, the Phillips head, plastic screw, plastic anchor, 10mm bolt right here on the top. You're going to find another 10mm right down in there, and another one right here on the side. When you got all four of those loose, the anchor and the 3 bolts, we can slide this forward a little bit. So our headlight slides out pretty easy once those are out of the way. And you've got lots of wiggle room here as far as wiring goes. You don't have to worry about wedging your hands back here in this engine mess. Over here on the side lamp, it's just a twist and pull out. Set that aside. Careful not to touch the glass of the bulb too much. These have a what do I want to call that? An electronic leveling on them. It's kind of neat. I haven't figured out the whole purpose of them. Mine doesn't work correctly anyway, but I believe that's what this plug is for. And you see the adjustment gear on the back. We'll just get this plug off of here. And the same thing here. Twist and pull out your, what I believe is your low beam. Could be your high beam. I don't know. We'll set this aside for now. Be careful not to let it touch anything greasy. And one more down here on the bottom. And like most things, much easier to do with 2 hands. Alright, we've got it out of the way. Before we go any further, I'm going to point out one very important thing. This wire here for the fog lamp has a lot more tension on it than for the driver's side. So I took that blanket that I used to catch it and pulled that over to this end of the bumper to make sure I didn't damage those wires. And you can see here there's still a lot of play in the way these are wired together. However it is that works. And I guess at the same time I should point out that here is what I believe is your airbag sensor. So, if that be the case, be extremely careful handling this piece. Alright, and I'm going to put a link in the description to a great video I've seen on clearing out the condensation from the lamp itself. I'm not going to bore you with the process I'm about to go through. So, when I get this dried out, we'll pick the video back up. So, maybe I lied. One quick thing before I get into drying this out. Right there, you can see how much water is pulled inside the light. I realized as I was moving it around that I could hear it sloshing. So I'm going to have to think about what I want to do to get so much of that out of there quickly. But again, just to give you an idea, that's where all that condensation's been coming from. It's stored up in there and has no way to get out. Alright guys, another interruption. Sorry. If you look here now, you can see I almost got every bit of that water out already. And basically what you have are these vent ports that you'll find rubber hoses on. One up here towards the top. Not sure what good that would do. Definitely not going to drain liquid. But this one here, you basically want to, it took several minutes, no way to show you on camera, get all your water to pool, and it's just a matter of trying to tip it back to the point that you can find the opening in here. You see that little bit of light. You just tilt that water back towards that and let it drain out little by little. You'll have to go back and forth and back and forth. But that got rid of a lot more than it would have just by heating this up to get it to condensate and evaporate. You know what I mean? Alright, now let's get back to it. So, with about 5 or 10 minutes, I just used a hair dryer. Essentially all the condensation, the moisture inside was gone. There's nothing that collects down here in this corner anymore. And what I ended up doing to speed things along, excuse the old clothes we're getting rid of, it's right there I drilled that tiny hole. That was where all the water was pretty well collected. So a little shaking back and forth. Apologize for this not focusing on it. But very, very small. Make it as small as you can. I'm going to put a little bit of sealant over that and that'll be alright. So I left the bulbs out and just alternated between one side and the other. Hot air, cool air. If you don't have a how can I say, a well-made hair dryer, you're going to overheat pretty consistently, so take breaks between hot and cold air. So like I said, after 10 minutes it was pretty much completely dry, and then I let it sit outside in the sun for about 10 minutes. And while I waited on that, I went ahead and pulled this light out. And interestingly enough, there's some staples here in this plastic where the car must have been repaired. Never like stuff like that. But what I'm going to do to avoid this failing on me in the future is run some clear silicone across the top of this one, just like I'm going to do on the one that already has a bad seal somewhere. And this being where water sits and has a chance to collect is just what makes sense. So, if you are replacing or working on the driver's side, just be aware it was a little harder to get out. It tends to get bound up on the frame down in here. Okay, and just to show you, not that it matters, you can use anything that's good for exterior, waterproof, dries clear. This is what I'm going to run across the top. I had a windshield got broken a long time ago. I still have this tube. So I figure if it's good enough to seal your windshield, it should be good enough for this. And it dries clear, so it won't be a big eyesore. Alright, we're going to sit this on here, give it a half an hour to an hour until it's no longer tacky, and button this dude back up. At this point, we've got both headlights bolted back in place. You want to turn the ignition on, check your lights, signals, flip your brights on and off. Start the car, check your fog lights, make sure before you put all this back together you don't have to get right back in and put in new bulbs. If you can get an extra hand, making sure that you have the lines in place That will make things a whole lot easier on yourself. If you don't have the bumper lined up with the bottom of the light and the fender, it's going to be near impossible to get these in place and started. But at this point, this is where you're going to put on both of your plastic inserts, the anchor, the rubber bumpers, and tighten down those Phillips head bolts, and move to the bottom and the quarter panels and the wheel well, and we're ready to close this thing up and check our lights out. If you hadn't figured it out on your own, it will make it easier to access if you turn the wheels on each side to give that extra space. Your plastic anchors go in easy enough. Make sure once you've got it back together that you do the wheel well plastic. You insert that back behind this portion of the bumper like it's meant to be. And unfortunately, the bolt that's up in here holding the fender to the bumper, the quarter panel, whatever we want to call it, without laying on your back, you pretty much have to put that on blind. So that kind of stinks. But I've got both sides on. We're going to lay back under here and reattach our bottom to the bumper again. And in case it wasn't clear the first time around, all we took out were the front bolts. Tough to get in your way. If you were thinking these guys here, you can leave those alone. It's just the 8 to 10 bolts that go across the front portion.